Hello. In this unit, I want to discuss yet another motivational theory. This is a theory developed by a gentleman named Frederick Hertzberg. And Hertzberg agreed with the idea of a needs-based theory, and he looked at what Maslow had done, but he suggested that Maslow's needs were not all equal, that in fact there was a difference between a need which could motivate us and a need which only satisfied or dissatisfied us. And he really said that certain needs need to be treated differently than others. If we compare him to Maslow, Maslow in his original hierarchy of needs treated each of these needs as equal. And we motivated ourselves climbing the ladder from need to need until we became self-actualized. Meeting one need meant it could no longer motivate us, and we started to focus on the second need. Hertzberg said, no, there's something uniquely different about the lower level needs. And he called these hygiene factors. And he said these can't motivate us, but if they're not handled properly, they can demotivate us. And from a distance, those two things can look the same, but there's actually an important difference that managers need to understand. The needs in the upper section, social, self-esteem, self-actualization, those he called motivators, and he felt that they had an almost unlimited ability to motivate employees to work harder and to accomplish more. So what he meant when he said hygiene factors, these are things that are in the environment around you. They are things that are given in the organization and in its operation. And they can cause you to become very dissatisfied. And when that happens, you're demotivated. You can correct this demotivation by fixing the hygiene factor, by removing the source of demotivation, and that causes an employee's motivation to spike upward, but only to a certain level. After that, continuing to try and improve that hygiene factor gives you no return, no results. Motivators, on the other hand, motivators provide an unlimited set of largely intrinsic factors that cause employees to want to work hard, to be more motivated, to accomplish more. In other words, those things tend to trigger positive feelings inside us, and what really motivates us is our desire to feel better about ourselves and our work. So that's what's unique about Hertzberg's concept. So take a look at some of these things. Hygiene factors, typical hygiene factors are things like company policies. There's just a given. The company says this is how you do business here. If that is demotivating to you, dissatisfying to you, then you are going to be less motivated than if the company had more motivational policies. But fixing whatever you don't like about that policy raises your motivation only a certain level, and then there's no more motivation available. The same thing with your supervision, your relationships. If you don't get along with your supervisor, it can demotivate you. If I replace your supervisor and bring in someone whom you do get along with, then you gain a little more motivation, but you go to essentially a baseline level. And after that, continuing to bring in nicer and nicer supervisors doesn't make you more motivated. Working conditions are classic hygiene factors, and we'll actually look at an example of one of those shortly. Things like salary and security, job security, those are also examples. If our salary is too low and we are unhappy with the amount of money we earn, then we're demotivated. Giving us a raise and bringing us up to the level where we feel we have equity, the level that we think we deserve, motivates us, but then continuing to give us raises after that doesn't necessarily motivate us. Motivators are those intrinsic things that we all seek that are tied to the upper levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we want to achieve things, be recognized for achieving things. We expect interesting work. We want increased responsibility, and usually with that also increased authority. And then we want the chance to grow and to advance ourselves in new ways. These things have an almost unlimited ability to motivate us. We never really are finished achieving. We're never finished advancing and growing. So these things we can chase forever. So the key point here, hygiene factors and motivators affect our motivation, but they don't do so in the same way. Hygiene factors are very, very limited in their ability to motivate us. Motivation factors, those motivators, have an unlimited ability to motivate us. So as a manager, you're going to want to address both of them, but you're going to want to remember that you address them in different ways and that you use them in different ways. So let me tell you a story that illustrates what I'm talking about. Let's imagine that once upon a time there was a great company and you worked for this company. You had a good job, you were well paid, you liked your coworkers, you liked your supervisors, the work was interesting and challenging, but the company had absolutely terrible restrooms. They were filthy, they weren't maintained well, and you got to the point where you and many other employees just hated to go into the restrooms. And as a result, people started calling in sick. People started leaving early, arriving late, trying to avoid using the restrooms. Productivity fell. People were demotivated. Management sees the trends. People are not performing well. What do? They ask employees, and everyone says, well, the restrooms are truly horrible. So management spends $10,000. You come into work one day and the restrooms are all renovated. They're now clean, everything's replaced, it's pleasant. Suddenly, your motivation goes up 10%. You have risen to a baseline of motivation. An inexperienced manager might look at this and say, I spent $10,000 on the restroom and got a 10% increase in productivity. If I spend $100,000 on the restroom, I should get a 100% increase in productivity. So then you come to work one day and you walk into the restroom and it's gorgeous with gold fixtures and satin wallpaper and things like this. That's a manager who has misunderstood the difference between a hygiene factor and a motivator. Coming into this gorgeous bathroom doesn't motivate you to work any harder. In fact, it probably causes you to wonder who you're really working for at this point. So fixing a broken hygiene factor produced a certain level of motivation, but continuing to invest in that does not give any further results. So managers, you need to recognize when you're working with a hygiene factor, fix it if you can, but when you're looking for long-term, more serious motivation, focus on other things, things that have to do with the way the job works and the way that people work. So only motivators can really inspire people to work. Now, Hertzberg looked at this and said, the real thing to learn here is that we can take this idea of motivators, and if we build those into the design of individual jobs, we add motivators for recognition, we increase the responsibility that individual workers have, we give them greater opportunities for achievement and growth. That gives us an almost unlimited ability to encourage those employees to work harder. So when we think about Hertzberg, his basic ideas are important. Remember the example of the restroom, but the thing you most remember and the place where he adds the most value to modern management is when we apply Hertzberg's principles to the design of jobs, which we look at in an upcoming unit. I encourage you to read the chapter assigned for this unit and to review the questions for this unit and try and answer them on your own. If you have any questions yourself about Hertzberg and his two-factor theory, then I encourage you to watch this video as often as you need.